In order for crypto and all the Web3 innovations discussed on this podcast to work out, onboarding new people into the space needs to be easier. And this episode's guest, George Mosomi, is the head of Africa's Unstoppable Domains team, which, after learning more from the recording of this episode, creates easy-to-use tech that will make the exchange of crypto that much more frictionless, which is something that's good for everyone. Imagine not having to type in or send a long hexadecimal code every time you want to send or receive crypto. Well, after recording this episode and learning more, I can proudly say I'm the owner of morethanblockchain.wallet. I'm absolutely a believer in unstoppable domains, and hopefully, after this episode, you will be too. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. Hey George, welcome to More Than Blockchain. How are you doing?
I am great, Jarrett. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure that you are here. We're finally connecting. I know you and I have been playing phone tag. I guess, do they even call it phone tag now in Web3? I don't know. We've been playing Zoom tag for a couple weeks, but I'm very glad that you're finally able to hop on. And actually, when you hopped on this morning, before we hit record, you said 3 words in a way that I thought you were referring to this thing. You said, hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. What's up, Big
And I then sent you the link and you saw that thing from BitConnect. And so you haven't seen that link before?
I haven't seen it before. But as soon as I clicked the link, I heard the exact same voice as what I said to you. That was hilarious.
Yeah, I really thought you were trying to. I think I'm going to start to use that, actually. You know how GM is like a thing? I think I'm going to start to use that meme more, or that whatever, that soundbite. And so I'll put the soundbite in here. You will have heard it now, or you can hear it right now, and you'll know a little bit more what I'm talking about. But that actually is from a conference, I think back in 2017. I think in the bull run of 2017, that happened. I could be wrong. It's 2015 or 2017. Yeah. What is it? What does it say on there?
So it was the videos uploaded on the January 24th of 2018. So probably the 2017-2018 bull run.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's in the Philippines, and he's a guy from New York City, and he goes over there. I think that there's a stereotype, especially around people from the United States, but especially around people from New York City, that they're loud and they're gregarious and they're kind of funny and they're quick-witted and they don't care what anyone thinks. And some of that's just like Americana, or what other people think of maybe, I'm going to say Americans. And when I say Americans, I'm only talking about people from the United States, not talking about everyone from the Americas. And he just fits all the stereotypes. And so I feel like they brought him up on stage because they knew something would happen, and then it happens. So I will leave the link to that in the show notes if anyone else wants to watch it. But it was a pretty funny thing because he basically shouts out BitConnect, and then BitConnect goes bust. So, but that brings us full circle, kind of, because I recently, on the most previous episode, I had on Norman Gabula, who's also from Nairobi, and we were talking about ETH Safari. So back to kind of the conference, the international conference. And today you're on because we're going to talk about Unstoppable Domains, the company that you're working with. And I've known about Unstoppable Domains for quite some time, because when I found out about ENS domains, which I know are not unstoppable domains, very big difference, I was very interested in this. And part of this goes back to Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor, back when the internet kind of started, and he saw domains as being the addresses for the physical homes in digital space, he bought hope.com, and he bought it for, I don't know, like $5, $10, $20. He talks about when he bought it. It was nothing. And now he could sell it for like $2 million. And I always thought that was really interesting. And he said, well, everyone wants hope. And so coming full circle, I see Unstoppable Domains playing a similar role as we dive into Web3, where if you pick up a cool name like George, and I think you guys, what do you guys have? .nft? Is that one of your domain endings?
Yes. We have a couple of domain endings, .nft, .wallet, We have a few others which are also growing with our partners. We offer top level domains with strategic partners. And we've just recently launched a .blockchain, which allows you as a user to claim an NFT domain wherever you want at a small price that allows you to have an NFT domain on steroids, basically.
Okay, perfect. Because when I first looked into it, I love the .nft. And do you guys also have .crypto?
Yes, we do. We also have .crypto, and I don't know if I mentioned .wallet.
You did, yeah. You mentioned .wallet because
Yes.
I think that, and I want to dive deep into unstoppable domains and ask and talk about that specifically. But I think as Web3 expands, whether it's ENS domains, but more, I think unstoppable domains is doing it right because once you buy it, you buy it. As far as I understand, you have it forever. Maybe, and we can come back to how that works. But before we dive into all that, I want to hear your story. How did you get into Web3? How did you get into crypto? Because the story in my head, and with most of the guests that come on, is that 3 to 5 years ago, you were maybe in crypto, but you weren't doing it professionally. It kind of seemed like something kind of fun. Maybe you made some money, maybe you made some friends, maybe you minted an NFT, and now you're in it professionally. So please share with me, what's your arc been into getting into crypto? How did you start? And then how did you get into unstoppable domains?
Thank you, Jarrett. So my journey has been very interesting. It started as an electrical engineer at the University of Nairobi, where I learned a lot about communication chains and how we could potentially reduce the transactive costs of, for example, when we were trying to do energy services, whereby the user would try to uh, have a way of reading their power meters without going to the physical power meters, and also send that information to the Kenya Power and Lighting Company. And it seems very basic right now, where you can do an online check of your power meters, but at that time it was very rudimentary technology. So the connections were basically Bluetooth enabled. We did a little bit of JavaScript and a little bit of at that time we had maybe just basic 3G connections. And when the deeper I got into how devices can communicate with each other, the more I realized there's a lot of opportunity for attaching a transactional information, whereby you wouldn't need to necessarily have money that's being sent on. At that time, we're still using physical tokens to pay for transactions, but where we now decided to have a look at how we can potentially work with the internet at that time, but at its very basic level, how we could use some of that information to finish those transactions without getting too complicated. But the long story of it all is I started my journey as an electrical engineer, got an opportunity to work at Safaricom, which is the largest telecom provider in the country. And I got to be part of one of the first people who was testing M-Pesa. And this set me off on a long journey of just being at the forefront of technology. M-Pesa is the largest mobile operator on the continent. It provides cash transactions through your mobile phone. And later on in my career, I moved to the UK in the early 2010s. I had a chance to do a master's degree in the energy sector. And that also put me right at the forefront of technology. In that process, I got myself working with another company as well, which was attached to Amazon, and we were basically trying to figure out how we can create data centers around the abundant energy that we had on this tiny island in the very north of Scotland. And in that process, I found the Bitcoin white paper, and I got super interested in how can blockchain be used for not only reducing reducing the inefficiencies of current monetary systems. That led me on to another journey of working in the blockchain plus energy sector. So basically trying to put together all these distributed grids, and there was like a similarity between how the distributed side of energy was starting to form, whereby you have people who are producers and consumers of energy. It was very analogous to how the blockchain was also set up, whereby you're moving away from a centralized entity who confirms your transactions to now everyone owning a piece of the records that are being made. That was in 2018, 2017, 2018. I got tired of living in the UK. I decided, let me come back to Africa and see what we can do in this space. And I have to admit, I came back thinking like I'm going to come and solve all of Africa's problems, or at least part of Africa's problems, only for me to come and find like a bubbling community of people who are getting into blockchain at that time. And at that moment, I got together with two co-founders and we set up what was the EOS block producer, which ended up being successful, and we were the only ones on the continent. We had an opportunity to build out that block producer, which was successful for about a year before we lost the ability to produce tokens, because it's a delegated proof of stake kind of protocol. But it was super exciting because a lot of the little startups came up out of that time where we were engaging the community, getting them to learn as much as possible about the capabilities of blockchain. And then fast forward to just earlier this year, where Web3 and NFTs, towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, where NFTs and Web3 became a big thing. The ability to now leverage blockchain to give the user the full control of their data and also the full ownership as we get into this new layer of the internet. And it's super interesting for the whole community, for the whole continent even, whereby you have people who never imagined that they can have the ability to take part in projects that are across the continent, where users never even imagined that you can take ownership of digital assets which can bring you long-term value, because we find that in this space we're constantly looking for, as young aspiring adults and teenagers, we're constantly looking for how we can leverage the knowledge and the skills that we have, because the things that we've been using in the past have not worked, especially on this continent, where you find there's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to processes. There's a lot of inefficiencies. There's a lot of, if for example, if I wanted to buy a piece of property today, it would take me at least 3 to 6 months to get that single piece of paper. And we're super excited to be part of this journey through the partners that we work with. Everyone is working in a way that is hopefully going to build up the continent and realize its full utility.
George, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And so it seems like the energy sector and work with M-Pesa, which is, as you were talking about, cash transfers. I believe that that's peer-to-peer cash transfers. And that's something actually I need to dive into more, because some of the work I'm doing now with Mercy Corps, the real world use case is really focused around how do you get peer-to-peer money around the world. So whether I'm in the United States, I want to send you money and you're in Kenya, we should be able to do that fairly simply. And when you think about the real world use cases of where we are now, and also what you just spoke about, which I think is so important, which is like our generations, the younger generations, we're not really excited to be patient for change, or maybe, which is what I heard. Maybe I'm wrong, but when you say bureaucracy, that is always like, that's a red button issue for, I think, anyone that's younger. And this is probably the same for all the generations before us. They felt that things move too slowly. So if you could talk about locally, whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in East Africa, whether it's in Africa as a whole, or just what you're seeing in the world, what are things that our generations maybe aren't excited to wait around for on the bureaucracy side? And then what are some real world use cases that you think you're seeing? And feel free to also start to tie in unstoppable domains.
That's a very good point. I think as generations grow, you find that subsequent generations wonder why things have to be the way that they've always been. And especially with the advent of technology right now, advertising, for example, a big thing back when I was in campus was to hire, for example, models and get them to take an advert or put up a big billboard, and that was your proof of work as a company that's trying to reach as many people as possible. But now this model has completely changed. Like no one even takes billboards seriously. There's a big disconnect between any brand that's putting up a billboard. If you're not engaging your users through the TikToks and the Instagrams, which also for me is a big change. If you're not engaging those people, your customers at that level, then you're completely missing out. And I think it's the same thing with even our blockchain protocols and everything that there is to do with Web3. You find that if what is happening is people are used to now, the new generation is fully used to getting things as they desire, as they need. And the efficiencies that blockchain is hoping to deliver might not even be there at this stage, but everyone that I know, people around me, are working day and night to build into those networks that will make things faster and easier to use. I know, for example, one of the things that we've been working on is to make sure that the user experience for blockchain and Web3 is as easy as possible. So Unstoppable Domains has enabled your NFT to simplify the crypto user experience. So, for example, we map all your user addresses on one side, and when you're working with a partner app, you basically type, for example, if your name is Jarrett, it's jarrett.crypto, jarrett.wallet, and the user on the other side doesn't need to think about this long hexadecimal address. Now, the most important thing right now is to make sure that as people are building products, they're building products for users who are not necessarily tech savvy, but they want the ease and the convenience and the efficiencies that they would hope to see as compared to what they've used in the past.
I think you're totally right. Like as things become easier to use, then the onboarding into the sector becomes easier. And I don't know if we've ever had a situation, I don't think we have with the internet, and this is, I'm describing Web3 and being amazed by it, but we've never had a situation where, like with Facebook, when you created your Facebook account, I'm thinking back to 2005 when I created my Facebook account, I just needed an email and then I had a password and that was it. And then everyone else saw that. Like you're saying, I'm just, we're getting away from like the difficulty. So, do you see unstoppable domains as kind of like people's Instagram tag or their Instagram handle or their Twitter handle? Is that how it's supposed to be used? Where I don't need to know anything else. I just have George.blockchain. That's the only thing I need to think about. And talk to me, if I have George.blockchain and I want to send George.blockchain or send you money, how does it work?
Yeah, it's exactly as you've described it. It's as simple as never needing to remember. First of all, on my side, I never need to remember. If I have my 10 crypto addresses, I don't need to remember all of them. I don't need to remember which email password I used on which network. I don't need to remember if I need to log in on using Facebook or if I need to log in using my Gmail, because now we've brought all those things together so that you only need that one login to access all these different applications. And then the beauty about now what we're doing with our NFT domains is you get to carry your reputation across the internet. This is through multiple social media handles, which can be tied to your address, to your NFT domain. And at the same time, you can use this to also display your public addresses or your public social media handles, as well as your website. All this under the power of just your NFT domain. And we call it NFT domains on steroids because the abilities are continuing to grow each and every day. Like as the users keep growing the utilities, we're enabling different things as the company continues to grow.
Unstoppable domains, I go and I get, let's use, I think the example, Jarrett.wallet. I'm going to pay, I think it's expensive. And I think I looked and it was very expensive. And say I pay $1,000 US. What does that give me? Do I then own that for life? Because as it currently the internet is set up, it's really hard to own something for life. You could own it for 30 years if you pay 30 years, but not for life, not for like ever. So, how does that work? And then also, we're going to get a little morbid here. What if I die? Then what happens to Jarrett.wallet? Can someone else get access to it? Or is there just going to be info on there forever? Like if no one else had my seed phrase. So, how does that work?
I think for me personally, what I believe is once you've claimed your assets, or once you decide this is the identity I want to have on the internet, you should be able to hopefully carry it to the grave. And that's a bit morbid, but in cases where, let's say for example, I wanted my children to carry on my NFT domain and possibly even gain from it if it had already accumulated all this good reputation across the internet, there's no reason why that shouldn't be inherited or transferred to my children. Now, there are a few protocols which are working on creating some form of transference to your siblings or to whoever you choose. One of them is called Dust, which basically tries to lock in a smart contract of your assets so that when there's proof of death, then the people that you had willed or the accounts that you had willed your NFT domain can be transferred to those users. In terms of, I think I missed your first question.
And I'm blanking because I'm just focusing on this what if somebody dies question. I think I was asking if you can buy it for life and how that works
yes.
and what the advantages are. Because, many people, when they think of domains, first of all, a lot of people don't own domains generally. I'd say the average person doesn't. I do because I have multiple different websites. I have multiple different brands and I'm doing different things. And I've also just accumulated domains that I think are going to be valuable in the future as kind of hedges, and they're just bets, and they're honestly just gambles. So I pay like $20 a year to keep certain domains. So yeah, the longevity of them.
I think that's a really good point. One of the things which differentiates Unstoppable Domains from any other NFT domain provider from the outset is that ability to own your NFT domain for life. And the principle is simple. Yeah, this is your identity. You get to claim it. Once you've claimed it, it's yours to keep. And the way that works is just we just took a totally different stand on it, because with your traditional websites and with other NFT domain providers, you basically rent it for the year, or you rent it for the amount of time that you pay for that NFT domain. That's the pure principle. It's just yours to claim your name or the name that you desire. Once you claim it, you get to keep it.
Okay, and I want to know, what is your wallet? What is your name?
Mine's simple. It's just my two names, georgemosomi.nft.
George Mosomi. Okay, and why did you choose .nft over .wallet, .crypto, .blockchain, .whatever? Why .nft?
To be honest, it was the cheapest one when I got it.
Okay, I figured it was because I was looking last night at different ones, and I was like, oh, this is kind of crazy because as you change, obviously the whatever, the price is very much influenced. And how are people using this? Because I think on your LinkedIn, and I'm actually just going to open up your LinkedIn in real time just so I don't butcher this. But one of the things on LinkedIn that I really like, and LinkedIn is actually where you and I met, your LinkedIn says head of Africa Unstoppable Domains. And I've seen you say stuff on LinkedIn like we're using Unstoppable Domains to basically not only bring Africa into Web3 but thrive. So when you meet people at a conference and they ask you, like, George, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm into Unstoppable Domains. Maybe they don't know about Unstoppable Domains. What is your sell? What is the value proposition that someone in Africa who's into Web3 or anywhere, if you meet me anywhere, and how would you kind of convey the real value? Because I see the value as someone who has to go pay every year to, make sure my credit cards are up to date to get my domains. But how does this going to not only onboard people potentially into Web3, but also allow people to thrive?
I really like that and that element of thriving. And I think it's one of the things I carry with me every time I'm interacting with people, especially in this space. Because for me, when I first came back, that 2018, back to Nairobi, I felt like there was such a powerful group of people with really good information about the next layer of technology, which is blockchain at that time. But all this information was just kept within those small circles, and maybe it was because of a lack of filtration into the general ecosystem. But what that continues to tell me is that as long as it's only a small set of people who have this information about how to build more accountability or more transparency in their networks, you won't be able to benefit as a society. It will only be those people, those niche people who get to benefit, but they can only go so far if they don't do it together. And there's this famous African saying which says, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, you need to go alone. But if you want to go far, you need to go together. And that's basically the guiding principle for me. Understanding the capabilities of Web3 and specifically the NFT domains that we allow people to claim gives them the ability to quickly interact with and interact with different decentralized applications on the web, and at the same time they have the ability to build on top of these identities that we are giving them. And that's just basically, we're trying to create a foundation whereby now building on top of becomes so much easier than if everyone was to try and create their own identity protocol.
So I meet you, you tell me all this, I'm super inspired, and you and I are going to start working on a project together. And I want to send you Ethereum. So instead of worrying about what your 32-digit code is that's alphanumerical, I could just say, let me send money to georgemosomi.nft. How do I do that? And I want to send money to georgemosomi.nft. Now, I don't know your hex, but I shouldn't need to know because I want to send it to your georgemosomi.nft. How does that work?
So the good thing is we're integrated. We just hit our 500 integrations mark last week. And we have 500 partners who, let's say you and I are within this application. Let's say, for example, if we are in blockchain.com and I want to send you crypto, or I want to send you a message or anything, instead of going through the complex process of copying and pasting that long hexadecimal address, all I need to do is just to type your Jarrett.nft or equivalent, and that automatically resolves. So what we've done is we have a set of smart contracts which read up the domains that you've mapped onto your address, and then with our partner API, we are with our resolution API, which is installed by our partners. They're able to pick up and read the address automatically. So as soon as I type that, it picks up whichever crypto that is on the other side and gets to use that address to resolve the transaction that I'm trying to send through. But it's a very simple process. The integration is, at least for a good developer, it's a 5-minute procedure to get integrated. And we're continuing to grow across the continent and the world, making sure that this process becomes as easy as possible for everyone to become a partner.
Okay, so, and I want to understand this because I think that unstoppable domains is exceedingly powerful. Just break it down to me. So I want to send you 10 ETH, and you're like, oh, 10 ETH, I'm going to figure this out. So but I'm like, hey, I have it in my MetaMask, and I actually am not part of a centralized exchange because I'm actually unbanked. How do I get this to you? Where do I have to go, or what do I have to do to make sure that I'm sending that Ethereum to georgemosomi.nft?
So you would once you're in your MetaMask, you'd click send Ethereum, and then you just type the address, and it's that easy.
So I just type in georgemosomi.nft,
Yes,
and then I hit send, and it would send to you.
Exactly.
And can you explain? Okay, and I think you already did just explain this, but I put in the georgemosomi.nft into my send, and I want to send you 10 NFT.
Yes.
But like I said, I'm unbanked, and so I can't put it into a centralized exchange and figure out another way. So when I put in georgemosomi.nft, what is happening? Can you explain why that works and why I don't need to put in the long hexadecimal code?
Yeah, so our founders are super smart. They came up with a way of of creating what we call our resolution API. And the resolution API is just basically a smart contract that automatically checks what address this is that is trying to send on whatever blockchain it is, pairs it up with the blockchain on the receiving end. So if I'm in an wallet X, let's say as an example, let's say I'm in an X wallet and I want to send you the 10 Ethereum, then what happens in the back end is that application will pick up the address as soon as I type it, jarrett.nft. We'll pick up the address, we'll check what protocol or what blockchain you have, we'll read all the addresses that you have, and it will automatically match the address I'm sending from, the blockchain that I'm sending from, to the blockchain that you have in your specific address. And then that will be put in the send contract, and then you'll be able to receive your crypto with just those easy steps.
That sounds super cool. And it almost sounds too good to be true. And in Africa, and maybe more specifically in Kenya or Eastern Africa, is that more peer-to-peer brand kind of identity? Is that where people are using it? What are the real world use cases of this currently in Africa, as you are the head of Africa for Unstoppable Domains?
Yes, I think it's just as you said, in Africa it's very, very strong. The peer-to-peer element is super strong in Africa, and especially because we haven't had, from a long time, there's been a lot of uncertainty over what crypto looks like. But even going back to the very traditional essence of how barter trade used to happen here on the continent, I'd give you my beans, you'd give me your maize if that's what I want. And there was this element of social connection whereby users would trade with each other rather than, a centralized market or a supermarket. And it's the same thing which is happening right now. So we have a bunch of some of our partners who have wallets, who are working with Unstoppable Domains to simplify that process, so that users don't have to think too much about the tech behind it, and they basically just have an operation that's as easy as the way they use M-Pesa to send each other cryptocurrencies. I think one of the things you may have seen in the last few months, Nigeria and Kenya have become some of the largest peer-to-peer crypto traders globally. The volumes are speaking to the need and desire for people to have easier and more efficient payment networks, which are also affordable, because some of the options that we have are really not favorable for the local market.
Okay, so I'm seeing now the power. And sorry, it's taken me a long time. Sorry, everyone, but I'm seeing now the power. You and I meet in a market, and just as you said, the time old, you have beans, I have maize. I want your beans, you want the maize, and we need to make that transaction happen. But maybe we don't even have enough cash because I have tons of maize and you have tons of beans, and we don't want to be carrying around that. But we could meet, and just like M-Pesa, we could meet and then exchange. I could say, hey, Jarrett.nft, great, send it to me there. And then you send it. And, either you're going to pay for it, or maybe I have more maize than you have bean and we need to recalibrate that. So you're going to send me some whatever. On the continent, what is the most commonly traded crypto? The story in my head is that it's a stable coin, because when you're doing exchange of commerce, sometimes you want something that, you can hold for a day or two and you're not worried about whether it's going to go up 5% or down for 5%. But what are the cryptocurrencies that people are using as they exchange with their Unstoppable Domains?
Yeah, I think what I've seen over the last few months, people have stuck to the traditional ones. USDT is very popular. I think one of the larger exchanges on the continent is Binance. They've been very active on the continent, and they also have Binance USD, which is super cheap to send to your peers. And the traditional ones are BTC for the ones who are trying to hold, as well as Ethereum. And obviously, Matic is growing as well very quickly, just because it's a lot cheaper. The gas fees are and resolution times are a lot quicker. And the same for Solana. I think there's a lot of positive energy towards Solana on the continent.
What is the wallet that is most often used currently in Kenya and East Africa and in just Africa as a whole? What is the wallet that people most likely to download to be able to start to dive into this? And I ask because days ago I was sitting with the Stellar CEO, Danelle Dixon, and she was talking about lobster. People are starting to use lobster a lot in different places. And so I wanted to ask that because, for example, I had never heard about lobster until we sat down. But I do think every region and every even country is finding different wallets that they'll prefer to use when transacting peer to peer.
What I've seen for most of the people in Kenya, at least, keep their crypto on centralized exchanges, and I know that's not best practices. But I know but there's a few people who are trying to build out alternative local solutions, and this will continue to grow. But I know Rainbow Wallet has been super active in the southern part of Africa. I know a lot of people still keep their MetaMask as their primary wallets. There's a minority, I would say maybe less than 2% have hardware wallets, but the majority sit in between, somewhere in between.
You know, when I think about unstoppable domains, I'm really starting to actually see more of how it's going to be used, especially on the peer to peer level. And I think one of the things I'm thinking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, unstoppable domains' biggest challenge in Africa is that it has to be, or maybe just in Kenya, and please, tell me where I'm wrong there, whether it's just the country or the region or the continent of Africa, it has to be better than the current solution or people aren't going to adopt it. And the current solution is M-Pesa. Is that right? And if that is right, how do you think you're doing currently in being better or equal to that kind of ease of use, that UX, that user experience? Where are you and are you there yet? And if you're not there yet, what does Unstoppable Domains maybe need to do?
I think as we continue to iterate and make the experience a lot more seamless, we still have a long way to go because you still need to connect to your existing wallet. The other person still needs a wallet. With M-Pesa, you just need a telephone number and you need a 4-digit PIN. You get your M-Pesa almost by default when you buy a SIM card, which makes the user experience super easy and super quick. So I think there's still a lot of room for us to improve, and even working with partners like Safaricom as they also jump into the crypto journey is one of the opportunities that all companies are seeing across the continent. One of the things which I've seen with some of our partners is that they are working with telcos because telcos can see the inevitability of the Web3 space. They're trying to get into the space. There's a lot of collaborations which are coming in place. We've seen metaverses, for example. We've seen a little bit of the on-ramp, off-ramp not being clamped down as it was in the past, because 3 years ago, anyone offering an on-ramp, off-ramp solution would basically get their lines stopped if they're trying to do an without naming too many names, if a trader was trying to create a solution whereby you can transfer your fiat or digital currency into a cryptocurrency, their wallets or their lines would be knocked out of line immediately. But now we're seeing a lot more friendliness towards those people because there's some transaction fee that the operator is getting, and I can see the value. They can see the value.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's unfortunate, but they're only kind of adopting once they can get their kicks and get their kickback to be able to then say they're part of the value chain or part of the network. And I am throwing up air quotes. I tweeted this yesterday and I'm starting to put more tweets on LinkedIn. I'd say here, well, in my own life, 1 out of 10 people own crypto. And then I said, of those people, I'd say 1 out of those 10 own an NFT. That means that out of 100 people, only 10 own crypto and 1 is an owner of an NFT. Do you think that because when you own an unstoppable domain like georgemosomi.nft or jarrett.wallet, that's an NFT. Are people seeing it as an NFT or are they just seeing it as a wallet address that allows them to do an unstoppable amount of things? Are you guys, what I really want to know is, Is Unstoppable Domains using the 3 letters that bring a lot of FUD with it of NFT? Or are you just starting to say this is your digital identity? How are you starting to market and brand that? Because I think where I am in Web3, messaging and the communication of the idea is just as important as the idea.
I think for us, I think from the outset was that we wanted to identify ourselves as a digital identity provider, and that's like the NFT is good to have because it shows you have the transparency and the efficiency, which is inbuilt by default, and the ownership element is also there by default. But our primary goal is to become your primary identity provider so that you as a business don't need to think too much about an identity solution. You don't need to build up that infrastructure. We've done it for you, made it easy for you to get the information that you need from your users, and they choose to give it to you. And we are all Web3 compliant by default.
And I want to ask a question here, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be bringing up one of your arch rivals here, but I think in Web3, there's room for everyone to swim. So with my ENS domains, my .eth, I have jcarpenter.eth, I have morethanblockchain.eth, I have a lot of .eths. I believe that I can get an encrypted email that comes with that domain. Is it the same with Unstoppable Domains? And in the future, is Unstoppable Domains thinking about kind of a decentralized chat feature where I could chat Mosomi.nft by being on this certain thing? So be like, hey, did you get the payment? I just sent it. So it's kind of like WhatsApp, but you can only get into it, not with phone numbers, but with Unstoppable Domains.
Yes, that's a really cool idea that you brought up. We've actually partnered with one of our email providers, and we offer you your NFT domain at ud.me, which basically allows you to have an email address on Web3 without necessarily compromising or exposing your primary email address. So that's just part of the journey that we're creating for easing the communication between you and another NFT domain owner so that we can have this unified journey, and you can transact, you can communicate, you can collect information, you can choose which information you're giving to the people that you interact with, and you're totally on the right path with that.
Are you currently using this email service? Can I message georgemasami.nft at udi.me?
Yes, at ud.me.
And now, can I email you from a Gmail, or do I have to have an Unstoppable domain to email you?
You can use a Gmail address.
All right, we might try that because I want to see how that works. So that's fun. As you look into the future, 5-10 years down the road, what's something you think Unstoppable Domains can do?
I think as we continue to grow our superpowers, one of the things that I hope that we can have is the ability to just have our public DAOs and all the social groups be able to quickly have, and I think we've already done that actually. We have badges that are attached for achievements, and you can carry this reputation across multiple websites. There's the capabilities of increased transparency. So I'd love to see our politicians show where the decisions they made, how far they've gotten in terms of public procurement, who was awarded what tenders in the public space. I'd love to see that as well, and how that money was used to build public infrastructure. That's just my own personal desire to see on the continent.
What I heard was, and I'll say it so that way you're not saying it.
Yeah.
You want to see blockchain cut down on corruption by increasing radical transparency.
Exactly.
And I want to see that as well because in all over the world, I've spent a lot of time in Latin America, and corruption is rampant there. I know corruption is rampant just from my studies of, studying international and talking to my friends that are from Africa. They're like, yeah, it's rampant, right? And the reality is it's rampant in the United States too. It's just legal, right? So it would be great to have transparency around what politicians are getting what private money, how much, and when they were sent that money. Yeah. And I do believe in the far future that will be a thing where you'll be like, oh yeah, I don't even need to think about these politicians, what they're saying. I can go see what they're doing and where the money is coming from. So I absolutely love that. You and I met on LinkedIn. If people want to get in touch with you, I want to give you a moment to just do your shout outs, where should people say, hey, George, I want to learn more about unstoppable domains. I'm in Africa, let's link. Or, hey, I'm not in Africa, but I still want to learn because I think this could help my business, help my community. I have a use case. Where should people find you? Go ahead and shout out all of the socials you would like to share.
Perfect. On LinkedIn, I am stroke Mosomi. So that's easy to find. On Twitter, I'm at Mosomi. And those are the primary places you can find me.
Okay, very cool. And we all know that if we want to send you money, it's georgemosomi.nft.
.nft.
Exactly. Well, George, thanks for hopping on. And I'm excited to keep in touch because as I told Norman, I will do everything in my power to be at ETH Safari next year. So I'm excited to get out to Kenya and see in Africa and see everything that's going on in Web3.
It's such a pleasure. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Jarrett, and I look forward to engaging with you and engaging with the community. Feel free to reach out at any point. We're building amazing projects on the continent and across the world, and we're not going to leave Africa to get left behind as it has in the past.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Jarrett.
Thanks for listening to this episode. And if you'd like to reach out to George, be sure to check out this episode's show notes for links to his Twitter and LinkedIn. As always, please follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain and check out our website at morethanblockchain.xyz to learn more about what's going on in the world of blockchain, crypto, and Web3. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing the episode link with a friend, family member, or work colleague. And no matter where you're listening to the pod, please subscribe. Thanks again for checking out More Than Blockchain, and I'll see you next time.